Welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you felt completely powerless? Today, we're diving into 4 unbelievable Reddit stories, from egotistical coworkers, arrogant know-it-alls, to a ridiculously handsome but clueless guy. Get ready to be shocked, amused, and entertained all at once. Buckle up for a thrilling ride, where justice is not just a distant dream but a reality unfolding right before your eyes. Which story resonated with you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss out on more fascinating stories. Story 1. You want to fire me? Oh, please do. Have you ever worked so hard and performed so well, only to become a target of jealousy? Instead of being recognized for your dedication and talent, you find yourself envied, sabotaged, or even pushed out, just because you're too good at what you do. Today, I'll share with you a gripping story about an outstanding employee, someone who gave his all to his job, benefiting not just the company but also his coworkers. But instead of appreciation, he became a threat to his own boss. His manager, a man full of ambition but lacking confidence, couldn't handle being overshadowed. Consumed by insecurity, he devised a scheme to undermine and eliminate his top-performing employee. But guess what? Things didn't go as planned. What happened next will leave you speechless. This isn't just a tale of workplace injustice, it's a powerful lesson about perseverance, fairness, and how true talent always finds a way to shine. I used to work for a well-established company, the kind many people dream of being part of. The job was stable, well-paying, and the coworkers were decent, with minimal office drama. Everything seemed perfect, except for one major problem: my boss. He was the type who needed absolute control, not just over work but even over how employees behaved around him. To him, respect wasn't earned through competence or leadership skills, but rather through obedience and submission. Those who flattered and played along advanced quickly, while those who simply focused on doing their job well, like me, were seen as a problem. I wasn't disrespectful, but I also wasn't going to pretend to admire or blindly agree with irrational decisions just to please him. And that, I soon realized, made me an enemy in his eyes. Over time, I learned that a workplace isn't just about salary or stability, it's about how you're treated and whether you can work with dignity. Then, things took a turn for the worse. I was known for delivering excellent results ahead of deadlines. Not only did this keep me on top of my work, but it also allowed me to help my teammates whenever they struggled. I believe that when a team grows together, the company as a whole benefits. But instead of appreciation, I sensed growing tension, not from colleagues, but from my boss. At first, I ignored it, thinking that as long as my work was exceptional, results would speak for themselves. But soon, the suspicious looks, cryptic remarks, and passive-aggressive comments made me realize something unsettling: my boss saw me as a threat. Perhaps he feared that if I kept excelling, higher management would take notice, and one day, I might replace him. Then came the breaking point. One afternoon, I received a terse message from his assistant. "Boss wants to see you in the private meeting room now." The message was short and emotionless, but it sent a wave of unease through me. As I stepped inside, I saw him sitting at the table, arms crossed, eyes colder than usual. Without any small talk, he finally spoke, his tone calculated and authoritative, as if delivering a grand decree. "I don't think you fit in this company anymore. Perhaps it's time for you to find another place where your talents will be better suited." Every word sliced through me like a knife. No acknowledgement of my contributions. No gratitude. Just a decision that had been made long ago. But the real shock? It wasn't the termination itself, it was the strange sense of relief that washed over me at that very moment. Stay tuned, because what happened next completely flipped the script. His words echoed through the silent meeting room, carrying a forced sense of authority. I looked him straight in the eyes, searching for any trace of hesitation or regret, but no, there was only cold calculation. He thought he was in complete control of the situation, that I would panic, beg to keep my job, or at least try to negotiate for a safer way out. But unfortunately for him, I am not that kind of person. Instead of resisting, arguing, or trying to justify myself, I simply shrugged and smiled, a relaxed, almost relieved smile, as if a heavy, invisible burden had just been lifted from my shoulders. My voice was calm, yet powerful enough to shroud the room in tense silence. "Oh, really? Then I'll resign right now." For a brief moment, I saw the shock flash across his face. A man who had always controlled everything, who had planned every step ahead, had not expected me to accept his offer so easily. He had likely prepared himself for a tense back and forth, maybe even strategized every possible reaction I could have. But there was one thing he had failed to anticipate: I agreed to his decision without the slightest hesitation. Silence stretched between us. He seemed to be recalibrating, trying to regain control of the situation, but it was too late. I had given my answer, and I had no intention of looking back. At that moment, I realized something: I was not the one losing in this game. He was. Because people like me, those who stand up to injustice and refuse to bow to power, will always find new ways to shine, in places where they are truly valued. The moment I walked out of the company, chaos quickly ensued. My colleagues, those I had worked alongside and supported over the years, were furious. At first, they were just shocked to lose a competent teammate, but soon, their outrage spread as they came to a terrifying realization: if this could happen to me, a hard-working and capable employee, then anyone could be next. A wave of dissatisfaction swept through the office. People stopped staying silent. Gossip and complaints quickly turned into real action. Some colleagues decided to file complaints with upper management, demanding a review of my former boss's leadership. Others didn't wait for the outcome, they started searching for new job opportunities, sending out applications elsewhere. It was like a domino effect. The company, already short-staffed, began to struggle even more as more and more employees considered leaving. And guess what happened next? Within just a week, the board of directors received an overwhelming number of complaints about my boss's harsh, authoritarian management style. The numbers didn't lie: productivity had dropped, employee morale was at an all-time low, and the turnover rate had skyrocketed. Management could no longer ignore the crisis. After an emergency meeting, they made a decision no one had expected: my former boss was fired on the spot. But the story doesn't end there. After leaving the company, it didn't take me long to regain my footing. Thanks to my achievements and reputation, I quickly received numerous enticing job offers from other companies in the industry. It turned out that my dedication and skills were not only recognized by my colleagues but had also caught the attention of several potential employers. But the biggest surprise came from the place I least expected: my old company. After everything that had happened, they reached out to me. But this time, they weren't just asking me to come back, they were offering me a higher position, one previously held by my former boss. A twist of fate, or a sweet victory? I smiled as I read their email, wondering if they had finally realized my true value. And the biggest question was, should I go back? I looked at the offer from my former company, thought about it for a moment, and then firmly declined. There was no need to hesitate. Why? Because I had found something better: a workplace where my talent was appreciated, where hard work was seen as an asset, not a threat. I had no reason to return to a place that once saw my dedication as a burden, where personal success was a reason for elimination. That company had a chance to keep me, but they chose to cast me aside. And now, as they realized their mistake, I had no reason to turn back. Because I had already moved forward. Sometimes, what seems like an injustice, what pushes you out of your comfort zone, turns out to be the best thing that could ever happen. If I hadn't been forced to leave that day, I might still be stuck in a toxic environment, wasting my potential, trapped by the fear of change. But that very moment of adversity opened up a new path for me, a path I truly deserved. So if someone tries to bring you down just because you're too good, don't be afraid. Don't let jealousy or injustice break you. Keep moving forward, hold your head high, and prove your worth in a place that truly values you. Success doesn't come from clinging to the past, it comes from boldly stepping into the future. Have you ever faced workplace injustice? How did you overcome it? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next inspiring story. Story 2, he's so handsome. And also so dumb. Have you ever met someone whose appearance was so perfect that you couldn't help but stare, but the moment they opened their mouth, you just wanted to turn away in disappointment? Someone who could make an entire room gasp with just a glance, only to leave everyone stunned in an entirely different way once they started talking? Today, I'm going to tell you a story about the ultimate handsome but clueless guy, a person who seemed like the total package at first glance but turned out to be all looks and no depth. Tall, incredibly good-looking, with an aura that commanded attention, walking with the confidence of a male model straight off a magazine cover. But the moment he spoke, you'd immediately realize, his brain was probably left at home. I'm not exaggerating, this guy proved it in the most spectacular way possible. And his story will leave you both laughing and questioning, how can someone look like a masterpiece but think like a blank slate? Have you ever met someone like that? If you have, brace yourself, because this story is about to hit close to home. The first time I met him was at a party hosted by a friend. The moment he stepped into the room, all eyes were on him. Tall, chiseled features like a movie star, a model-worthy physique, and an undeniable presence. It was as if the entire room slowed down just to admire his entrance. It wasn't just women, even the men stole a glance, some in admiration, others in envy. Everyone wanted to talk to him, as if simply standing nearby could absorb a bit of his aura. And of course, I wasn't an exception. But then, the moment I gathered the courage to approach him, flash a polite smile, and start a conversation, everything changed within the first few sentences. I realized something crucial. He might be one of the most handsome men I had ever met, but he was also one of the most nonsensical speakers I had ever encountered. The way he spoke left me so bewildered that I started questioning myself, was I hearing things, or did he really just say something completely absurd with full confidence? It felt like opening a beautifully designed book only to find, all the pages inside were blank. And that was just the beginning of a ridiculous, unexpected, and hilarious encounter. At first, our conversation was fairly normal. I asked the usual small talk questions, and he answered casually, though a bit briefly. Everything seemed fine, until he suddenly dropped a statement that completely floored me. Did you know that if you wear a bulletproof vest, you're immune to all impacts? Even if a truck runs over you, you'd be totally fine. I nearly dropped my drink. My brain came to a screeching halt. What did he just say? I looked straight at him, waiting for a smirk, a mischievous sparkle in his eye to signal that this was just a joke. But no, his face was dead serious. I tried to stay composed, but my curiosity got the best of me. Clearing my throat, I asked slowly. So, you mean, a bulletproof vest can protect you from getting run over by a truck? Without hesitation, he nodded firmly, his eyes gleaming as if he had just revealed a universal truth the world had somehow missed. At this point, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But if you think that was the peak of his creative thinking, think again, because he had plenty more where that came from. The entire evening was filled with one mind-blowing statement after another, each more baffling than the last. His words had the impact of a scientific breakthrough, but in a completely wrong direction. I don't understand why people use airplanes to fly. If you just drive a car up a really tall hill, wouldn't you eventually reach the sky? I almost choked. Did he actually think you could just drive high enough to reach space? The sun is actually just a giant light bulb hanging in the sky. Has anyone ever told him that the sun is nearly 150 million kilometers away? If the Earth is really round, then why don't we roll away when we stand still? At this point, I officially wanted to give up. My brain was overloading just trying to process these statements. Sitting there, listening to his groundbreaking theories, I felt like I had accidentally stepped into an alternate universe, one where all the laws of physics had been turned upside down. If Einstein were here, he wouldn't be clapping, he'd be smacking his forehead. And the scariest part? He genuinely believed every word he said. By the end of the party, I could only sigh and remind myself, you really can't judge a book by its cover. A handsome face doesn't always mean a sharp mind. And unfortunately, this guy was the perfect example of that. His statements could make listeners feel dizzy, confused, and even consider booking an appointment with a psychologist. But the most shocking thing? He never once realized how absurd his words were. To him, everything he said was absolute truth, no need for evidence, no need for logic, just belief. His confidence was next level. So much so that one time, he even had the audacity to debate a friend of mine, a real physicist who had spent his life studying the laws of the universe. And the topic of their debate? The law of gravity. Now, you'd think this would be a serious, intellectual discussion, right? Nope. It quickly turned into a battle between scientific knowledge and limitless confidence. First, he completely butchered the equation for gravitational force. That's fine, everyone makes mistakes. But what left us speechless was how he defended his argument. Newton was just guessing. How do we know he was right? I bet if I focus hard enough, I could float up into the sky without an airplane. I swear I am not making this up, he said that with absolute sincerity. I turned to my physicist friend, who was struggling to maintain composure. But in his eyes, I could see a silent despair, his years of academic research flashing before him, only to be challenged by a man who thought he could levitate through sheer willpower. But the story of this guy doesn't end there. After a while, he started job hunting. His stunning looks got him plenty of interview invitations, but things always fell apart quickly. Why? Because he failed nearly every interview, unable to answer even the most basic questions. But the most legendary moment came during one particular interview. The recruiter, after glancing through his resume, which, I assume, had little more than his name, a picture, and a wildly confident self-introduction, asked him a simple question. Can you tell us about your skills and work experience? A basic question. Anyone would prepare a strong response. But guess what he said? I don't have any experience, but I'm really handsome. And that alone will have a positive impact on the workplace. I swear, if this were a comedy movie, this scene would have the entire audience rolling on the floor laughing. The result? Of course, he was immediately rejected. The recruiter didn't even bother with another question. But fate works in mysterious ways. Despite failing interview after interview, despite no company wanting to hire someone who only radiates beauty, he never gave up. And then, something unexpected happened. A major fashion company took notice of him. Not because of his revolutionary science theories. Not because of his business acumen. Nope. The only reason? His face was just too perfect. In a short time, the same guy who failed every job interview became an exclusive model for a high-end fashion brand. That's right, he never had to become a physicist or a business mogul. He never had to prove any scientific formula or fight to fly without a plane. All he had to do was walk down the runway, wear designer clothes, and look stunning. So you see, everyone has their own unique path to success. Some shine with intelligence. Some succeed through hard work. And some, like this guy, just have to exist, and the world can't help but stare. Have you ever met someone like this? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next wild story. Story 3, Kids, Stay in Line. No cutting like a superstar. Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You're standing in line patiently, waiting endlessly in what feels like an infinite queue. Everyone ahead of you is also waiting their turn, following the rules. But then, bam! Out of nowhere, a group of mischievous kids appears, cutting in as if the long line is just a mere decoration. You're frustrated, but what can you do? They're too young for a serious argument, yet too cunning to pretend they're just innocent little kids. So, what's the solution? Today, I'll share a story that will leave you completely satisfied. A guy decided not to let these kids get away with it, but instead of getting angry or scolding them, he came up with an incredibly smart plan to teach them an unforgettable lesson. After hearing this, you might want to try it the next time you face a similar situation. I was patiently waiting in line at a famous amusement park attraction, one so popular that the queue seemed endless. Everyone was waiting in an orderly manner, occasionally glancing ahead, hoping the line would move faster. Then suddenly, amidst all the patience, a group of about 4 or 5 kids stormed in like a whirlwind. They didn't care about the queue at all, they dashed back and forth, weaving through the crowd like professional racers. At first, people thought they were just playing around, but no. They had a plan. A clever, sneaky plan. Somehow, they slipped between people, squeezing through the tiniest gaps, and then disappeared. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but soon, I realized, they weren't leaving the line, they were slowly working their way to the front. Within minutes, the entire group was standing comfortably at the very front, looking as if they had been there all along. People around started murmuring, but no one dared to speak up. Arguing with adults is tough enough, let alone with a bunch of quick-witted, sly kids who knew exactly how to take advantage of adults' patience. I could see some adults frowning in frustration. Some shook their heads in resignation, while others just sighed and kept waiting. But I couldn't let this slide. Then, a middle-aged man standing ahead couldn't take it anymore. He furrowed his brows and spoke sternly. "Hey, kids! No cutting in line. You have to wait your turn." Everyone turned to look, waiting for an explanation, or at least a hint of guilt, from the kids. But no. The kids just laughed, completely unbothered. One of them, clearly the leader, shrugged with a smug grin and replied cheekily. "We're just kids. Standing in line is for adults." The whole group burst into laughter, as if they had just delivered the most profound life philosophy. Some adults exchanged looks of disbelief, while others sighed in frustration. And the kids? They were so pleased with themselves, they nearly applauded. It was clear this wasn't their first time pulling this stunt. At that moment, I knew I couldn't let them get away with it. But instead of getting angry or arguing, which would only make them more entertained, I came up with a plan. A simple but highly effective trick. I walked up to the kids with a friendly smile and lowered my voice as if I were about to reveal a top-secret tip. "Oh, you guys like this ride too? Well, follow me, I know a secret shortcut." The kids instantly fell silent. Their eyes lit up with curiosity. Some of them exchanged glances, wondering whether to trust me. But as I expected, they took the bait. Their excitement was undeniable, their eyes glowing as if they had just discovered a hidden treasure. One kid nudged another and whispered, "Must be a VIP entrance. Let's go." I chuckled inwardly but kept a serious expression. Casually, I led the group on an unexpected journey. I didn't rush. I took my time, turning left, then right, weaving through different play areas, making the kids even more eager. They followed closely, whispering and speculating about the secret path they were about to uncover. After a few minutes of walking in circles, I suddenly stopped, turned around, and smiled slyly. "We're here." The kids blinked, looking around. And then, reality hit them. They were standing right where they started, at the very end of the long, never-ending line. There was no VIP entrance. No magical shortcut. They had unknowingly walked themselves right back to where they should have been in the first place. The moment they realized they'd been tricked, they froze in shock, their faces twisted in disbelief. One of them stammered. "Wait. What? How?" But before they could react, a thunderous round of applause erupted. Everyone in the queue, those who had witnessed the entire scene, clapped and cheered, with some even laughing out loud. An elderly man beamed and said, "That was brilliant. Instant karma." The best part? The kids couldn't complain. They had willingly followed me, excited about the shortcut. If they protested, it would only expose their attempt to cut in line earlier. In the end, after a moment of silent defeat, they had no choice but to stand there, quietly accepting their fate and waiting in line like everyone else. Fair play, everyone has to wait their turn. From that moment on, the kids didn't dare to cut the line again. No shouting or scolding was needed, the lesson was delivered in a way they would never forget. They had experienced firsthand what it felt like to be sent back to the start, and perhaps next time, they would think twice before trying to cheat the system. A sense of satisfaction spread through the crowd. Some people were still chuckling, while others nodded in approval. A middle-aged man patted me on the shoulder and said, "That was genius. A perfect way to teach them without making a fuss." Have you ever faced a similar situation? When someone, whether a child or an adult, cuts in line, do you have a clever way to handle it while keeping the peace? Share your story in the comments. And if you enjoy these kinds of entertaining tales, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more one-of-a-kind moments. Story 4, the VIP customer who wanted to return an item. After 12 years. Have you ever encountered a customer so unreasonable that they almost made you cry? Not just the usual complaints, but someone with logic so bizarre that you're left wondering whether to get angry or just laugh. Today, I'm going to share an unbelievable yet entirely true story about a man with unmatched confidence who thought he could return an item after 12 years of use. That's right, you didn't mishear. Not 12 days, not 12 weeks, but a full 12 years. That's enough time for a child to go from kindergarten to middle school, yet this man still believed his purchase was eligible for a return like it was yesterday. This story didn't just shock me, it became one of the most absurd customer interactions I've ever witnessed. And trust me, what happened next was even crazier. I work at a home appliance store, and it was a relatively slow day. With not many customers around, I was standing at the register, enjoying a rare moment of peace during my shift. Suddenly, a middle-aged man walked in. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt and carrying an old, battered box containing an electric stove. With great determination, he slammed it onto the counter as if he were presenting a treasure. With a tone of absolute authority, he simply declared, "I want to return this. It's broken." I glanced at the box and smiled professionally. It seemed like a normal return request, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, I scanned the barcode and checked the receipt. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. The stove had been purchased 12 years ago. Not 12 days. Not 12 weeks. More than a decade. A time span long enough for a newborn to finish elementary school and move on to middle school. And yet, this man still thought he could return it. I took a few seconds to process what I was seeing, making sure my facial expression remained neutral. Taking a deep breath, I smiled politely and explained, "I'm sorry, sir, but our return policy only applies within 30 days, with a maximum warranty of 1 year. Since this product was purchased over a decade ago, we can't accept the return." I assumed that with such a clear and logical explanation, he would understand and leave. But no, this was only the beginning. Upon hearing my response, his entire demeanor changed in an instant. His eyes narrowed, his voice rose an octave, and he nearly shouted, "What? Your store is completely irresponsible. I bought this here, so you're responsible for it. I used it for over 10 years, and now that it's broken, I want a new one. What's wrong with that?" A moment of awkward silence filled the store. Nearby customers started glancing toward the register, drawn in by the commotion. Some even whispered among themselves, likely struggling to process what they had just heard. I took another deep breath, determined to stay professional despite the sheer absurdity of the situation. In the calmest voice possible, I explained again. "Sir, no store in the world allows returns after 12 years. Furthermore, this model was discontinued a long time ago. There's really nothing we can do." I genuinely thought that after hearing this, he would finally understand the absurdity of his request and leave. But I was wrong. "I don't care. Get me your manager, now." He slammed his hand on the counter, his voice filled with the self-importance of a king demanding justice. My manager, a seasoned professional with years of experience handling difficult customers, stepped forward. He calmly examined the stove, then checked our system to see if there was even a remote chance we could do something. I stood by, awaiting the verdict. And then, the most shocking twist of all was revealed. The stove wasn't even purchased from our store. A dead silence spread across the register area. Customers around us gasped, some even stifled laughter. I stared at the man in disbelief as my manager pulled up the proof. "Sir, this receipt is from a completely different store. We have never sold this product." For a brief moment, the man froze. His entire body stiffened as if his brain needed extra time to process the information. I almost expected an apology, or at the very least, some level of embarrassment. But no. This man refused to admit his mistake. Instead of apologizing or leaving quietly, he cleared his throat, adjusted his collar, and declared, "Ah. I must have been mistaken. But still, your store should have better customer service. I'm never coming back here again." And with that, he turned and walked away, as confidently as a general marching off the battlefield after a victorious conquest. I stood there, completely speechless. My manager was equally stunned. We exchanged looks, both trying to comprehend what had just happened. An awkward silence lingered for a moment. Then, from behind the counter, one of my coworkers burst into laughter. That was all it took. Soon, chuckles spread among the customers in line. A middle-aged woman shook her head and muttered, "That's the best exit excuse I've ever heard." Another customer added, "I thought ridiculous customers like this only existed on the internet. Guess I was wrong." I sighed, shaking my head with a tired smile. Every day at work brings a new story, and this one was definitely a classic. The takeaway. From funny yet real stories like this, there's a common theme we can recognize. Confidence is a double-edged sword. Heavy checkmark when used correctly, confidence can be a key to success, like a charismatic guy who may lack knowledge but finds his way in the fashion industry through sheer charm. Crossmark, but when confidence is paired with ignorance, it leads to absurd situations, like a man trying to return an item after 12 years, or kids trying to cut in line because they think they can get away with it. Sometimes, just for a small, immediate benefit, people are willing to bend rules and ignore fairness, whether it's cutting in line or trying to make a store pay for a decade-old appliance. But these stories also teach us something important. Staying calm and handling problems tactfully is far more effective than getting angry or arguing. So, the biggest lesson? Lightbulb: always stay composed, adaptable, and aware of your value. Lightbulb: don't let others' absurdity affect you, but also, don't become the subject of someone else's funny story. Life is full of ridiculous moments, where nonsense and irony become the norm. But in any situation, how you handle it defines who you are. Backhand index pointing right to the overconfident guy in fashion. Good looks may get you in the door, but knowledge and a learning mindset will take you further. The world keeps changing, and while appearances fade, wisdom and sincerity last forever. Backhand index pointing right to the kids cutting in line. Cheating may give you a momentary thrill, but respecting rules earns you long-term respect. Life is like a long line, everyone must wait their turn. Backhand index pointing right to the man trying to return an item after 12 years. Confidence is great, but without logic, you risk becoming a joke. Learn to accept mistakes and look at problems from different angles. Admitting when you're wrong is a sign of true maturity. At the end of the day, fire looks may attract attention, but character and intelligence are what truly matter. Fire grace under pressure is always more powerful than anger. Fire, and sometimes, the best lesson isn't in the outcome, but in how we handle the situation. Have you ever encountered a situation like this? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more entertaining and insightful tales.